Alright, hello once again. This is Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College, and as part of the Rankin Technical College AWD, or Application and Website Development Program, and in particular the AWD 1111.NET Framework with Web Databases class, I'm doing a series of video presentations based on the textbook for that class for the fall 2019 semester, that being Pro ASP.NET MVC. And so far I have gone through and done Chapter 1, and I'm in the middle of Chapter 2. Alright, I've done 2 or 3 lectures on Chapter 2. It's a longer chapter, and we're not, remember, as the saying goes, it's a marathon, not a sprint. So, we are on page 20. Alright, it says the simplest way for us to create a view is to ask Visual Studio to do it for us. Alright. So what we're going to do is come here, and we want to make an index.cshtml file. So in other words, when this particular method runs, we want there to be an index.cshtml inside of here, and we'll put the code in that file that we want to have run. The easiest way to do that then is to right mouse click on the name here like this, choose Add View. It'll automatically say View Name. I'm going to check and see what they show here. So we did the Add View. Alright. Visual Studio displays the Add View dialog, which allows you to configure the initial contents of the view file. Set the name to index, which is the default name. Set the template to empty without model. And as you can see, that's what it looks like already. And leave the create as partial view, use a layout, both of these unchecked. It says don't worry about what all of this stuff means right now. We'll go over it later in this chapter and in future chapters. Then click the add button. So again, we want this empty. We want that to be left empty as well. I believe that's what it said. Yes. All right. And then we click Add. After we click Add, notice how inside of here there will now be a file called index.cshtml. That'll come up momentarily. There it is. And when you look at it, what's in here virtually is just standard HTML. Our doc type statement, our beginning HTML tag, we don't even have a language attribute there. Our ending HTML tag, beginning and ending head tags with a simple meta tag that says this should be responsive, our title, which is index, and our body, which just has an empty div in it. Now this layout equals null. What that means is, as of right now, we are not using a layout file. All right. Now, if I jump back here, if we had checked this, use a layout page, we did not. But had we checked it, that would have changed. All right. So, Visual Studio did create for us a file called index.cshtml in our Views Home folder. All right. It says if it didn't work, delete the file created and try it again. This is another MVC framework convention. The views are placed in the views folder inside of a subfolder that's got the same name as the name of the controller it's associated with, except it doesn't have the word controller on the end. That file ended with a .cshtml extension. What that means is it is a C# hypertext markup language file. So in other words, it's an HTML file which can include C# code that'll be processed by Razor, which we'll go through in a whole other chapter later. All right, the effect of the values, I told you to enter. It says it's created this, and I just mentioned to you what that meant. All right. So the layout equal null, I just went over that with you. All right. Anything that starts with an @ like that is Razor code. It's a simple Razor expression, and again, it tells Razor we're not going to use a layout for this. Okay? All right. Now they want us to come in here and add this hello world from the view, okay, inside of that div, that empty div that I showed you before, in here. So hit enter, paste that in. Now it's a little bit different though. Now we have one of those files. Remember? You remember before how it was looking for, one of the files it was possibly looking for was under home index.cshtml. Well, now we have a file under views home that's called index.cshtml. The easiest way to run this application now is to right mouse click on that file and say view in browser. Do we have to do it that way? Of course not. As always, there's more than one way of doing the same thing virtually all the time. What this should do, if it works, is it should come up and say hello world from the view, and as you can see on the screen and on the middle of page 23, that's exactly what it's doing. All right. So the author mentions here, when I first edited the index action method, it returned a string, meaning that the MVC did nothing except pass the string to the browser. Now we're saying it returns a view result. So the MVC, or Model View Controller Framework, renders the view, and it returns the HTML it produces. We didn't tell MVC which view should be used, so it automatically used the one that had the same name as the action method. The name of the action method was index. So it goes and it says, oh, look under the view folder and find something in the home controller or in the home folder that is called index, which is this. So we tell it to go in there and run that code. Now that may make a lot of sense. That may make almost no sense. Either way, it's fine for where we are right now. It says I can return other results besides strings and view results. For example, we can do a redirect, which will send you to another URL if we wanted to do that. We're going to get into more complex uses later on in the book. Okay, on the bottom of page 23 here, adding dynamic output. And as the author says, without dynamic output, a web application isn't much if it's just static. In MVC, the controller must construct some data and pass it to the view. The view is responsible for rendering it to HTML. As mentioned here on the bottom paragraph, one way to do this, in other words, one way to have data passed from the controller to the view, is to use the ViewBag object. ViewBag, which is a member of the controller base class, it's a dynamic object which can hold virtually anything. All right, so it's like this big bag that we can throw stuff into. So what are we going to change here? Well, what we're going to do is we're going to create a variable inside of our index that's called hour, which is going to go and it's going to find out the current time and grab just the hour from it. Right now, as I'm doing this, it is 1:22 p.m. So the hour in military time should be 13. And then it's going to give us a greeting. Well, not yet, but it's saying, is the hour less than 12? It's not. So it will not say good morning. Instead, it will do this action, and it should say good afternoon. So I want to go back and add this code right here into my controller index method. To make this a little easier to read, Just going to put this on a separate line. All right. So again, if the hour is less than 12, so had I run it this morning, it would have said good morning. Since it is not less than 12, it should say good afternoon when we get all done, when we get to that point. All right. So I provide data for the view when I assign the value to the view bag. This greeting property didn't exist until I just set it up right there. So as it says, this allows me to pass data from the controller to the view in a very free, fluid manner without having to do anything ahead of time. All right. Then what we're going to say in this, we're going to change the line that we had that said hello from the view. Now it should say either good morning world from the view or good afternoon from the view. So let's come in there and do that. So we have to jump into this. And I'll tell you what, let's take this line that's in here right now and let's just comment it out. I thought it would take that. Well, let's see how they want it commented. Interesting. All right, that's razor syntax. We'll get into that in a bit. All right. So this should say, because it is not less than 12, it should say good afternoon world from the view, if I did it correctly, if there are no errors or anything in my code. Again, as mentioned, the addition of this stuff in here, this is a razor expression. All right? It says when I call the view method, the MVC locates the index file and asks the Razor's view engine to look through and see if there's any C# code. Razor looks for expressions and processes them. There's nothing special again about the word greeting. We could have called it Ralph and it would have worked fine. When we run this now, it should look just like it's shown here, which is the good afternoon world from the view. Let's see if indeed that's the case. So I always like to come in here first before I'm going to run it, do a file, save all, and then go ahead and run it. So again, I'm going to right mouse click on here and choose view in browser. And let's see if it now says good afternoon world from view. And as you can see, it does. All right. We are at 13 minutes, which is not a bad time right now. But the next thing that's in here is to create this simple data entry application. This will actually be the party invite thing that we're supposed to be working with. So we're on page, looks like 25, and from here on out for the next 20 to 25 pages, we will be working, I believe, on this party application. And please, we're going to do it in class also. If what we're doing does not make sense, it is your student responsibility to ask. Okay? So I'll come back with the next part of this, starting with creating a simple data entry application in just a couple minutes.